Hi everyone, my name is Jordan Johnson from JoJoEmpathic.com, and I'm a psychic medium and intuitive healer. In today's video, this is a remake of last Sunday's community service. I was facing technology mishap after technology mishap. Even today when I've sat down to record this, I've faced little mishaps here and there, but that's okay. I see it as a good sign because this message for you today is really going to change your life. And it's at the perfect time too, because Pluto has officially shifted into Aquarius. Today is November 19th, 2024. So everything happens for a reason. So I'm filming this for you guys. The last one was very blurry. This is clear. Let's just dive in, okay? Because again, this is going to be super important for you to know. I'm going to be going over Sumerian records today. Why? Because we are going to be diving deep into the first written language and records of our origin as humans and Earth. Okay, why is this important? This is important because we are cyclical beings, and so is our Earth. So we can look to the past to predict the future. And if we're in our intuitive brain, we can know exactly what to do to maximize our prosperity and at this point, survive, okay? Let's see here, a few quick announcements. Join me every Sunday on YouTube for a community service message where you can join the live chat and post any comments, questions that you may have about the sermon or just in general about your spiritual development. Maybe you want to hear from a loved one on the other side. Join me and I will go ahead and answer all questions at the end of each sermon. I'll start with the questions that are pertaining to the sermon, and then I'll get into any other questions at the end. Okay, so that's every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central. Hope to see you there. Also, I offer private readings and healing. You can book with me directly at jojoempathic.com, and I'm also on Etsy. Be sure to sign up for my emailer. It's a pop-up sign up on my website. This will keep you up to date with any promotions I have going on, any events, and I also give an astrological monthly read too, so that's always really exciting. If you are looking for spiritual development training and coaching mentoring, please join me. I have a 6-month spiritual transformation called A Journey with JoJo. We'll dive into energy healing, your life contract, meeting your spirit guides, learning how to heal yourself, tap into your own medical intuitive ability. And this is so important, especially in these days as we're seeing this massive shift. You're going to see more and more people leave religion and turn to spirit, which is amazing. This is what we call the golden era, and the Aquarian era that we've long waited for, that we very much so need. So join me. You don't want to, go through these shifts without knowing your language with spirit, and I'm going to teach you how. All right, so lastly, I've started this recently as we've seen a lot of shifts in the economy more over the past few years, but more recently very intensely. I offer one free group healing session every month. It's been really, really amazing so far. Please join. You can find the link right on my website. And the theme this coming group healing session, it'll be on December 2nd, which is a Monday night at 7 p.m. Central. You can just hop on my website. You'll see the link right under the free group healing session tab, and then just join. So the theme is New Year, New You. So I'm not big on American holidays. I actually don't practice American holidays, and I know our calendar is manipulated. Our cycles have been manipulated through the system, but what we're going to do is we're going to look into the year. We're going to manifest for the year, starting with our energy and quantum healing. So I do recommend you bring a vision board and some crystals, grid your space, keep your vision board near, and I'll lead the session. Are you ready to dive into this content? Let's go. Okay, so welcome. Today will be a holiday that I celebrate for the rest of my life. So Pluto has entered into Aquarius, and by history, as we are moving cyclically, we could see the American Revolution, the Industrial Revolution around this time, the French Revolution. So this Pluto in Aquarius is all about transformation and rebirth. So where we're at today, unfortunately, but it's a good thing, we are in a revolution for human rights and women's rights. So it's a women's revolution where we're at today. So join me in reconnecting, remembering, awakening your truth, your spirit. And with this comes healing, comes clarity, and comes peace. Okay, so let's just dive in here to the service. So this service is called the Higher Heart for 5D New Earth. What does this mean? So we've all probably heard of the term the Great Awakening. This has been occurring for a while now, the past few years. So many individuals, it comes in waves. A lot of us are volunteers. We come here, and with, in the 60s, it really started, and that's when we started to feel the Pluto and Aquarius energy. We saw the hippies and the individuals that were here to stop war and to bring peace, okay? And to bring awareness to our food system that was already becoming very much so poisoned at the time. And so right now, and as of, I believe it's like 2012, 2017, we're getting another wave of individuals waking up and remembering, okay? So I'm not teaching you guys anything. You're remembering the truth, and we discern the truth through our bodies. So when I speak this message today, I'm going over a lot of facts because I'll be looking up, and I'm going to show you where to look up the records. This is science. This is recorded history. So use your inner knowing to use discernment on what I'm speaking, and I recommend that you look up this information yourself, okay? So we're in a period of awakening. It's a natural occurrence for us because when we're born here, a lot of us are born into a state of we don't know who we are. Our power's in our parents' hands. They have to take care of us. And so it's a really disempowered state that all of the systems that we are in bring us into, from the start in the hospital to the preschools and the schools and to the corrupt, legal system, which profits off of people's suffering, and the medical system, which profits off of, people's prolonged suffering and illness, and, the school system that profits off of our ignorance, and the religions and the churches that profit off of our control and fear. All of that hits ahead where we're at right now because it doesn't work for us. It's not of love, it's not of light, and it's not for us. So just as we see throughout time, and I'm going to break this down for you, we see where we hit ahead in destruction and pain and suffering and war, greed and control, and where it just boom, or it says, no, that's not what we're going to do here. We're going to have peace and love restored. So awakening leads us to making better decisions for ourselves, more intuitive decisions for ourselves, and how we interact with the collective. So a lot of us, we awaken, we can't even eat the same foods we once ate. We can't even go to the schools we once went to, or the churches, or the programs that we were once aligned to. We no longer give into, and we reclaim the power back in our hands and become more free thinkers. This is what it's all about, and this is what I help individuals around the world to do and get and reclaim back. It's your birthright. So why have we been seeing so many deaths in the past few years? There's always death, but remember, death is part of that illusion. And with Pluto shifting, this is where we start seeing things being revealed and exposed. So the illusion behind death is that death isn't really real. When you die, it's more of your spirit. It's your home. It's actually more physical than your actual physical flesh. Your spirit is. So a process of remembrance and awakening for some that don't choose to stay here on earth and awaken, death is also a form of remembering. And I will be going over grief healing on this channel, as I do work with individuals who are grieving, and it is a process that can feel painful, but I will be speaking more on this because we have knowledge to help us through grief in truth. And truth is, your loved ones, when they cross on, they're not mourning. We are here because we're not home. So you have a choice here with your awakening. It's a choice if you are going to stay here on earth through these massive crazy shifts and help bring the collective into a higher state, or there is destruction. So we're going to be breaking down the cycles of illusions and darkness being exposed to reveal the truth. So story time. I have a website for you. I'm going to give it to you. The Sumerian language is the oldest written language known on Earth. And these tablets and records were found in modern day Iraq. And I believe it's in control of Oxford University. So here's a link so you can read for yourself. etcsl.orinst.ox.ac.uk. Okay? That is where you're going to go and read these texts. Now remember, you can't read languages or any kind of sacred text without being in your mind's eye first. It's the same for the Bible. You'll misread it, you'll misdiscern it. And it's the same for the emerald tablets, which I'll go over. Toth created those. You couldn't even understand what the tablets were saying unless you were in your third eye. So remember, spirit speaks in symbology, whether it be through, animals, through your body. Symbology is the one we mainly are, using to discern, whether it's through shapes or symbols, whatever the symbol is, that is, symbology is how spirit will guide us and speak to us. Sometimes it's literal, but most times we have to go through an experience with the factor of time here and understanding. Now, I also have this information from working with the Ascended Master Toth. As soon as I got into tarot, Toth, Torah, okay, all interconnected. This is when I was first introduced to this Ascended Master who has guided my entire career so far and really helped me to religiously deconstruct so that I can have freedom and elevate into esoteric knowledge. Remember, if you're in mesoteric knowledge, it's here. This is where there's the dualistic mind. This is where there's that duality. People, they go through these near-death experiences, or they have visions or prophecy and they see heaven and hell. It's very black and white. That's because of their belief system. When you elevate and remember into awaken into esoteric knowledge, that's where we have unity, okay? And that's where we must be, I claim, in this new day, okay? So for 5D New Earth, the solution is what we call the Christ consciousness, which is unity consciousness, which is from a place of saying no more war, we need peace. This side and that side, peace to both. Let's come together as one and coexist and cooperate. I feel there's no other choice. There is no other choice. We've tried the other way, the dualistic mind, for too long. So how do we get into a place that is non-dualistic? Well, we jump into our higher heart. This isn't very much so talked about. And in fact, I haven't even really been publicly talking about this, but the time is perfect now. Now we're ready. So we've heard of our heart chakra. In your heart chakra, you have a 0-point connection. Science would explain this. Yeah, not me, science, okay? Science would explain this electromagnetic field as a point where there is infinite potential. So this is where God exists, the goddess exists, okay? So if you go into your 0-point connection, you can essentially tap into all things and manifest all things from this space, this energy. Yes, your heart is that powerful. It really is, okay? So if you take your fingers from your chin to your nose, this is about the length up from the sternum is where your higher heart is. This is where I will claim today, we must get into in order to create a better world. So when we tap into our higher heart, it's connected to our right brain. When we create from the brain, we create a very dualistic outcome. So if we're praying for peace, we could also be bringing forward war. When we get into the higher heart, there's no duality. So we can essentially create from a place of unconditional love with no negative kickback. Yes, I said it, no negative kickback. So this is the solution for us. You must jump into this higher place and ascend. Dream from this place. Create a new world from this place. Manifest from this place. And this is how we bring the unity consciousness forth. And this is what Yeshua did bring. This type of esoteric and mystic knowledge that is essentially saying that God is within us and that we have a power to create from a place of unconditional love if we get out of the mind. Okay, so not many people will understand this and they'll keep creating destruction. Don't let that be you. Now, let's get into, I talked about Toth. I also want to mention that I remember a day I was in mediumship development and I had awareness I have spirit babies near me. I do help individuals with conscious conception. I do work with the spirit babies that are trying to come in a massive wave right now. They're very high vibrational souls. Not many individuals will be able to hold a frequency and grid within their space between two partners to be able to conceive in these days. These souls are looking for very specific parents that are conscious, parents that are of love and unity consciousness. So if you are struggling with fertility, I'm not a doctor, but reach out. I can help you book a reading with me. So when I asked my spirit babies, I said, where are you from? And they told me Planet X. Now, I had never heard of Planet X before, but when I looked it up on Google, it actually is a planet, and it's known as Nibiru. So this is when I really had a massive awakening, and when the Ancient Secret Flower of Life by Drunvalo Melchizedek, the Melchizedeks are, I don't pronounce that right, excuse me, but they're a powerful brotherhood. since the start of time here. And so I recommend getting that book. So I have knowledge from this book, and I have knowledge from working with Toth and my spirit babies. Let's dive in. But first, let's start with the facts, okay? And again, guys, I want you to look up all of this yourself. When I work with clients on Journey with JoJo or individually, just in general, I always encourage people to develop your own intuition. It's up to you. Nobody can, tell you what your life is going to be. You create that. Nobody can, always tell you what your spirit guides are saying. They're there for you. And you say, well, I don't have the gift. You do have the gift. Do you know how many people that I work with that say, I saw spirits when I was a kid and then it went away? Because we are interdimensional mystical beings. You're a spirit first, and we just don't remember. So let's get back into remembrance and reclaim your sight. Your clairvoyance, don't be afraid of it. It's your clear sight. Your clear cognizance is your clear knowing. Your clairaudience is your clear hearing, okay? We can't see through our spiritual eyes or spiritual ears unless we're plugged in. And I believe this story really gives some backup to what I believe. So let's dive in. Let's start with the Sumerian records. So the Sumerian is the oldest known language, and it predates the Bible and the Quran. So once you hear this story, you'll hear all of the symbology that you'll see the Bible and Quran, potentially stole this information from. Now, when we go into the tablets, we hear of this planet Nibiru, or Planet X. They called Earth Tiamont, and they called Planet X Murduk, the 12th planet. Now, what's interesting about Planet X, according to the tablets, is that it rotates and moves in the opposite direction that Earth does and other planets. And every 3,600 years, it travels into our solar system. And so they explain in the records that every time that Nibiru, or Murduk in this point, Murduk, travels into our solar system, it causes a catastrophe. So the records explain the asteroid belt, in which they call, I quote, the hammered bracelet. They explain that when Nibiru passed Earth before the moons hit, and half of Earth broke off. So they explain that the asteroid belt, the hammered bracelet, is actually chunks of Earth from this catastrophe. We can look to this 600 year shift for the icebergs melting and floods as well. Okay, so they also describe the beings from Nibiru as Nephilim. The females are described to be very tall giants, which science has proved today did exist on our planet. Now, the females were recorded at 10 to 12 feet tall, while the men were recorded at 14 to 16 feet tall. But what was interesting about the Nephilim is that they were mortal, so they only lived to about 3,600, 360,000 Earth years. Then they would die. So the records state that Nibiru had environmental problems. Sound familiar here? Okay, cycles, and I want you to tap into your psychic ability. Your psychic ability is there for you through your nervous system, don't demonize it, to help you to detect patterns and energy for survival. So tune in. I intend to go into my psychic ability and listen with your spiritual ears. So Nibiru had environmental problems, specifically atmospheric, because it's so far from a sun that it was very, very cold. So they were looking for solutions to their atmospheric problems, similar to what scientists on Earth are doing today. Scientists on Earth are supposing we throw dust and shoot and project dust into the atmosphere to stop the sun's toxic rays. As the sun is becoming hotter and hotter and influencing us today. So the Nephilim had this similar concept, except they were using gold particles because it refracted and reflected light and heat. So they needed gold in order to save their planet, and they had very advanced technology. So they came to Earth to harvest gold. Now, what's interesting about that is, when we have the field of STEM today, we have, my brother's an aerospace engineer. What's interesting about like rockets and what Elon Musk is doing, what that is doing is it's polluting our environment big time, our atmosphere. The satellites are polluting our atmosphere. The natural way for planes to fly, don't think I'm crazy, is through consciousness, is through energy. That's the way that it doesn't disrupt this earth and the grids here. That's the way we're supposed to be doing it. So evil scientists like Elon Musk are actually polluting and making a mass destruction for us, and they want to leave the planet and not deal with it here. They want to, you know, they're contributing, but they don't want to find the solutions here. They just want to leave before the catastrophe. So, now that's my opinion here, but back to the records. So they had, and we can see in the Egyptian, you know, hieroglyphs, we can see spaceships and hover spacecraft. So all of that is used from the mind, and that technology is very advanced. Your technology, you're one of the greatest technology on the planet. I mean, you're artificial. I'm going to go over our creation. And you're artificially holding intelligence, some of the greatest intelligence in the solar system. So technology has been since before Earth and beyond. So 12 leaders from Nibiru left and brought hundreds of workers to harvest gold in modern day Iraq and Africa. And one of the leaders who the Bible stole the name from, Yahweh, is really Enil. So Yahweh, every time you're praying to Yahweh, you're praying to Enil. Let me tell you about this guy. Okay, so he was the lead miner in gold. They had a mothership. Now, my old astrologer is a well-known sound healer in Western New York, and she was reading me one day, and she got into a past life, and she saw me actively working to take gold up. She saw me just taking gold up. Now, I am Rh negative. Some people will say that this bloodline is actually descendant of the Nephilim. And when I get into why we were created, you know, I did have a shock, like, oh my God, did I help create a slave race? Are we a slave race that I helped create? Potentially. Potentially we all are, so hang in there, okay? So I believe this is very true through my own walk and through what I read here and what I see. Okay, so they went to Africa to mine. Now, this is obviously like, it was slaves that they were using to harvest gold. If you ever look at mines, like if you know what really happens in mines, it's dangerous, it's scary, and it's horrific. It's really, a lot of them are inhumane work conditions for people. So there was a rebellion, ready? Cycles, okay? So this rebellion of the slaves or the workers led to a kind of like a collapse of what was going on. So the Nephilim had to become very strategic. They decided to create a slave race. And remember, these beings are mortal. So they took primate blood, they mixed it with the earth according to the records. The records, I believe, says it's clay is the translation, as well as mixed it in a flask. Talk about cycles, test tube babies, right? So there's pictures of actual, like what would look like a glass flask. So they took primate blood, clay, the sperm of male Nephilim, and they mixed it together to create, for a purpose of more advanced race, but they were still going to use this race to mine gold. Sound familiar? Are you chasing gold? Are you chasing money? Right? Or are you chasing spirit? But this is what we've been doing since the start of time. So yeah, test tube babies, this is how we were, according to, you know, Sumer, we were created artificially. Now, I believe that this was then put into Nephilim women, and there was then birth of humanity that became, they still at the first point until the Eve story, we'll get there, were still immortal. I'm still mortal, but that's kind of the process. So our mothers and fathers are technically Nephilim, according to the story. So the records explain that the goal was to kill us after they were done harvesting all of the gold that they needed. Scientists have found gold mines to prove where the tablets claim this was. So Toth explains that our race was placed on an island west of South Africa called Gondwana land. And what's interesting, and according to the ancient secret flower of life, it states that around Africa that it is known that there was a place very similar name called Gondwana, except for one tribe the Zulus tribe claiming that we come from the sky. So this island, I believe, did exist, and that's where we were. We were contained there. We were controlled there. So you're praying to Yahweh, you're praying to a God of control and manipulation. So back to the back here. So Nephilim, what they did after so long is they began to consciously die, and this is where we start to see the first Genesis pattern, the flower of life. So with the Nephilim mothers and fathers dying, they began to form a grid over Earth, and using this consciousness pattern, they placed it into the Halls of Ameti underneath the Great Pyramid, very, very, very far down. So their grid created a flame, I believe white and blue, and this flame is where they would create races and species. And we see the Genesis pattern all around the world in ancient texts, in ancient tombs, in ancient pyramids, everywhere. In fact, after conception, the way that we're formed is actually a Genesis pattern. Okay, the flower of life here. And Terrence Howard, I always think of him. He's really big on bringing truth to light. When I think of STEM, and I want to talk about this in another video about the shift that we'll see in STEM, but this is the time where a lot of the truth gets brought to light in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So it's time for us. But back to the story time. Sorry about that. So there began to be more extraterrestrial races that began to come into existence to birth in the halls of Ameti, like the Syrians, okay? So what we see with the Syrians is, we see Enil first going into the waters to create us with the dolphins and the whales. The dolphins and the whales are Syrians. They come from a planet, Oceania, which is in the Sirius B. So that's why you see, like, I think of the Dogon tribe where they had the half Fishman, because we originally were mating with the highest consciousness on the planet, which was, not fungus, but with a heart, dolphins and whales. Okay, so they are very advanced beings. And so the record explains that, we were being created for as slaves. And one day, Enki, who is Enil's younger brother, they were always kind of fighting and wanting power and control. And one day Enki, he was upset and he went into what is called Eve, which may be where they got the Garden of Eve from. They say an actual woman, female race, was named Eve, and they were in garden-like places, locations. So he went to Eve, who was a slave, and he convinced Eve to eat from the apple tree, and which gave her consciousness and the power to conceive. Let's slow down here. This is big. So this is my opinion here and how I read this from my higher mind. When I give readings to people, sometimes when I see spirit babies or I'm knowing about somebody's child, my symbol in my book is an apple. An apple to me spiritually is the symbol and mediumship for children. Now, when I think of the apple tree, I'm thinking of the tree of life. So if you know anything about the Kabbalah, like the tree of life is within you. So I'm reading this. I don't necessarily believe that maybe she ate something. I believe that she activated her chakras, because your chakras are the tree of life, that apple tree. And that when you open your chakras, that's when you become awakened. You can't heal yourself unless you open your chakras, right? Same thing today. That's how we awaken. And what's also happening today in this dark world is a lot of us won't be able to conceive our apples unless we activate our chakras and activate our ovaries and testes as well. So they no longer had this dualistic view. They weren't controlled by somebody saying of who they are and how to think. They elevated to esoteric knowledge, and this gave them power, it gave them knowledge, and they were able to be immortal at this point. Very interesting. So she could go higher in her thoughts. And the records say that Eve grabbed Adam and convinced him to eat as well. Awakened him too, right? Ladies, do we awaken our men? A lot of us do. going to break down the masculine and feminine a little bit in this as well. So the Bible's version says that God walked into the Garden of Eve and couldn't find them, even though he's all-knowing. He couldn't find them, and he called out, and they came, and he didn't know what was going on. But he didn't even, sense there was mischievousness. He just saw that they were ashamed that they were naked. So then he found out that they have awakened. And that's when, I feel that there was this kind of like, if we look at the God of the Old Testament, very angry, very controlling, and he did so much killing. He killed and he controlled, and he said, you don't follow me? Your religion, you're going to burn in hell. He was very controlling, Enil. So very interesting there. Now, what is interesting about the records is that they explained that there was a pole shift that happened. Now, this is of interest to me because one of my symbols that I hear is pole shift, plate tectonics, and as of the end of October 2024, I started to pick up a lot of seismic waves, okay? So this is the history of our Earth. This happens very regularly, where the Earth sinks and the oceans rise. My prediction is that the east and the west coast of America will sink. The Hopis prophesied that the only safe place in America will be the four corners of America. Everything else could be potentially blown up or underwater. Think it's crazy? You have to understand the Smoky Mountains were once underwater. So what happens is the island sank that we were all on, and a new landmass arose. So we see the birth of Luemeria. So Enil took us to Lemurian islands, and these are modern day Hawaii down to Easter Islands, okay? Now, although we were more advanced at this point, now we could conceive. We were still slaves, but we were more so monitored now by Enil. And we had a lot of success, we the people, at this time. Now, the Lemurian people were very right-brained. They were essentially more of a feminine nature, even the male race. So they were very psychic, and they had a very inner connection and communication and all things. So they were very telepathic. They had an evolution of science there, so we can see then a manipulation of our skulls change on Luemeria. Our nervous system and spine, they were really great surgeons and scientists that have changed essentially our identity. So this is where we really start to see conscious conception cycles. So because they were so interdimensional, they began to form this form of interdimensional lovemaking, because they found that produces a different type of child, a different type of soul. So they would mate from the mind and mate from love, mate from the higher heart to birth children. I love this. I love this. This is exactly what's happening right now. And you have to understand, like, this is where Tantra really begins to come into existence. And before World War I, we were more spiritual, we were more psychic, but there was, again, that left brain control, which I'm going to get into where this really starts. It already did start, but it's going to get even deeper when we get to Atlantis. And we went to a deeper sleep after the war. Anytime you're in fear or control, you lower your field, and that will affect your memory. Your Merkaba protects your memory. Your chakras protect your memory. So there was the Great Awakening in the 60s where all of this information starts to come forward. So that's where we start to see the resurface of Lemurian kind of information, and Atlantis information. We have Mount Shasta. I've worked with someone who's very respected in Mount Shasta to teach Lemurian history. Her husband was helping me with telepathy when I was struggling. Very interesting. So this has been a journey for me to get all of this information. So what is Tantra in yoga? It's really union with God through sex. So this is where we have these mystery schools that are introduced to Earth to help us to reconceive and conceive in a different light, to birth a new humanity. And this is where we see, again, Luemeria sinking just as it always does, and Atlantis rising. Okay, so these pole shifts are so important because there's always a catastrophe and destruction of man. So we then get into Atlantis. And this is where you start to see Mayan records of Toth, actually, and Toth the Atlantean, and Toth in ancient Chem, and then Hermes. So we had those three incarnates. I believe many, many more. But this is kind of where we're at now. So we're in Atlantis. And what was really interesting is the Lemurians, even the men, were still very feminine. So they had the consciousness of a very young, like a teenage girl, feminine. And of course there was peace, you know. So more extraterrestrials began to come to Earth, and there's this explanation of very, very dark beings from Mars, Martians that came. Now I believe this because before I even read the book, I was told from my guides about Martians and about this collective that I'm fighting against. I'm not fighting, but to bring truth to, because they're no emotion. They have no emotion. They have no feeling body. So they're corrupt. They don't care. They're just left-brained and logical. So we have Atlantis with the right-brained female, and we have the Martians with the left-brain logical. Now, because of this mind, there basically were wars on Mars and complete and utter destruction, okay? So complete and utter destruction. And so it's known as the Lucifer rebellion on Mars that led to it ending on Mars. And, you know, basically their mission was to separate us from God and create a delusion, an illusionment. One example of a Martian in more modern ways to look at it is the Mr. Spock from Star Trek, okay? Just logical. So they invaded Atlantis, and it was known to be very horrific. They, you know, took advantage of the little girls, the men, the logical men, sound familiar? And they married them and made them their wives. And so they invaded and colonized without permission. And so there was a division of Atlantis of the right-brained and the left-brained, okay? So the Martians tried to be right-brained, but they were not able to love, okay? Now, they also had advanced technology. I think all ETs do, and we do too here. So there was another pole shift. Here we go again. So they saw that there was like a comet coming, and the Martians wanted to use a laser beam to blow it away. But the right-brained Lemurians were like, this is divine, this is God's will, let it be done. And the Martians agreed. So their science would say there's still fragments of this comet near Charleston in America today. So the comet came, it, you know, destroyed everything, and so the Martians were very upset about this. They were angry. You know how a left-brain logical man is when he's wrong, right? He doesn't care, he just wants to be right. So this is when there was the first divorce. They divorced women. They said, we're gonna get control of what's happening. You know, and so they took over. This is when they began to create the first synthetic Merkaba, first synthetic artificial intelligence. And they went back to Atlantis, what was left, whereas like modern day Bermuda, and scientists can still see these fields that were created, electromagnetic fields that were created. And then the good guys like Toth, they left it, I believe, in a spaceship to Chem. And from my knowledge, I believe that spaceship is underneath the Great Pyramid. Now, they began to grid Earth on this new mission. So I see a lot of light workers who have a history of helping to grid the planet. And with this, they began to form the unity consciousness to save the world. They said, we can't be this way, left-brained, right-brained is good too, but we need to come together. And so that's where you see the unity mindset, the Christ consciousness, the empowerment of people, that you have a choice to make change. You have a choice to choose coexisting and cooperating. You have a choice to choose love. So sacred geometry, grids, and consciousness are all interconnected, and they began to grid the earth to help control the pole shifts and help create a space of Christ consciousness and unity on the planet. So I believe people were spread upon the earth that had this knowledge to protect it. So where are we today? There's a lot of prophets that say now is a time for another pole shift, unfortunately. So what happens with pole shifts? So it's stated that it's about, from the book here, 20 hours. So about 3 days. So it's within 24 hours, but 20 hours long, but it lasts 3 days. So about 3 days of night, they call it, to where you will see, and I'm reading the prophecy here, big chunk of America sinks. I believe that. Mayans described this 3 days of night at this void in the Toronto document. Okay, so we essentially may be up for another 3.5 days of darkness where there's a pole shift, and in this period, unity is really what will save you. People that aren't able to activate their Merkaba, they won't be able to protect their memory, and they will, they'll be gone essentially, because you have these magnets in your brain. Your brain's like a computer, and your Merkaba is what is going to help you to stay intact, to be able to manage these powerful shifts. I think this is another reason so many of us are going underground, and so many people are building underground, because that is through history a way that we've lasted through these shifts, by going underground, because the electromagnetic shift is going to be so intense that above earth, many people don't make it. I see this as well, very symbolic to what I see for people that continue to turn away from the dark and follow religion. I believe that they will lose their minds and become and transition into dementia, completely forgetting who their family is, completely forgetting everything. So, a lot of people, we're seeing that now. They're not able to manage these crazy shifts on earth. I know you feel them. And so this key is when you activate your Merkaba, as these shifts have happened, I've become more still over the years. I've become more centered. And that is how we make it and remember. So back to this, I'm going to probably leave off with, we get into ancient Egypt here, and this is where we start to see the grids in South America. And, we begin to see out of Christianity, and the Egyptians felt that, Christians thought that the Egyptians were occultists. They began to demonize them and call them dark. And so the light keepers began to go more underground. That's where we start to see like the Great White Brotherhood and all these different brotherhoods, the Toth Brotherhood, and we have the Essenes. So Mary Magdalene, Yeshua's mother, was actually a part of the Essene Brotherhood. So it's believed that Toth, Mary, and Joseph interdimensionally created Yeshua as and kind of like an out of this world being that's here to help save us through, sacred geometry, through activating our Merkaba, through activating our chakras, and choosing love first and over all things. So Yeshua was a mystic. He was not into religion, and he actually preached against it. And religious people were very much so calling him blasphemous, that God is within us. How dare you? Many times I've been corrected, people tried to correct me when I explain that God's within you. They're like, you mean the main God, right? You're not God, the main God, right? No, we are gods. We are creator. And throughout history, people like me giving that message have been persecuted, killed, tortured, and burned at the stake. So that's the story that I wanted to share with everybody today. And where does that leave us off today? Of course, after ancient Egypt, there is more of humanity, right? But we are shifting more into the Piscean age the Aquarian age from the Piscean age, and so from Pisces. So how do we manage? We get into our higher heart. So let's look at history. We need to stop giving praise to false gods. We need to activate our chakras to survive. We need to activate our Merkaba to survive. And we need to create from our higher heart space through Christ consciousness and unity consciousness, through unconditional love consciousness, to save our planet. I do have hope that we are moving towards a day where the collective is able to get into their higher heart, and we are able to get our power back in our hands from the left brain logical men that have stolen it from us for so long, that have wanted to control us and keep us working, keep us in the 9 to 5 and pay taxes, and keep us harvesting gold for them. As we see many people around the world still harvesting for some of the most corrupt leaders on the planet. So understand this. Let's get a little bit into our higher heart. You have to understand that your thoughts are logic-based, okay? We are very cyclical. There are patterns of thought within our mind, and the brain creates very polarized manifestations. We don't need any more people saying heaven, you're going to be damned in hell. You must choose heaven. You must choose to repent. A God of unconditional love is not in the same sentence as judgment or punishment, period. So it's just not true, and it's mesoteric knowledge to control people through fear. Act in line, stay in order, or else you're going to be condemned. It's a consciousness. That's why, again, those that have the religious mind, when they begin to have near-death experiences or prophetic visions and dreams, it's always very polarized. It's always through the lens of mesoteric knowledge. So we awaken and we integrate, and we get into our right brain, our intuitive brain, the feminine brain. But I'm claiming we should get there through our higher heart, which is connected to that brain. So there we have, more of... There's no kickback. There's no, you're not going to create just dualistically or black and white. You really rise above this lower form of control, ego, and logical mind, which again has destroyed our planet. So if we're moving forward and you're awakening right now, take advantage of Pluto moving into Aquarius. This is the time that the Hopis prophesized the head becomes the tail. So the men have a seat and the women rise, right? The people of color, we finally get to rise into places of power again. The oppressed and marginalized get to rise again into power. So this is our time, and you're going to start to see karma, good karma, being paid out to those as promised through destiny at this time. So let's conclude. What can you do to help yourself if you're awakening? Number 1, work on religious deconstruction. Get your mind and your heart back. Get your power back. Get out of that punishment mind. Change the judicial system. Stop wanting to punish people. Stop telling people that they're going to burn in hell if you really don't know. Because that's awful, and it brings more fear to this planet. We have enough of it. Number 2, get sober. These times are calling for us to do the right thing, meaning let go of what is holding you back. Let go of what's destructive. Choose love for yourself. When you love yourself, you love God. And it starts with a sober mind. If you're playing with plant medicine, or even worse, something that's like a hardcore drug or alcohol, at this time, something's wrong. Okay? My body can't even hold certain foods. I'll projectile vomit. I can't touch alcohol. Plant medicine isn't even in arm's reach anymore for me. So sobriety is key to these times and survival. It'll help you to be able to become more centered. If you can work through your shadow, getting over an addiction, you'll be able to integrate your shadow. And, when those emotions come up, let it be your teacher to say, you've been using this to cope. No more. No more escapism. Pluto and Aquarius, it must be revealed. It will be exposed. Okay, so let's end the suffering by making choices for ourselves that are rooted in consciousness and unconditional love. Number 3, give yourself the healing that you need and deserve. Go within, activate your chakras, activate your Merkaba, your meridians. All of this can help you to heal and tap into your self-healing ability. Work with me. I can train you in medical intuition and energy healing so that you can do this to yourself. You can send it to your spouse, your kids, your animals, anything, okay? This is our birthright. Again, every field in STEM it needs to be a conscious movement. This is a consciousness war for our remembrance of truth and our power. We can manipulate technology from the mind. I know I talked about it with spaceships and planes. You know how many times I manipulate technology as a psychic? It happens all the time. And I've seen people that are skilled at it, okay? This isn't that woo-woo for me. This is my real life as a remote viewer and psychic. Number 4, you have to integrate your shadow. We're not running from our shadow anymore. We're not hating ourselves because we love this and that. We love to, drink alcohol or whatever, it's toxic for us. Your soul chose for you to love that. So your goal is to not overdo it, to come into balance, to let go of the things that are toxic to the flesh, mind, and spirit. Integration is key. Wholeness is key in order for us to be able to even think from a place of love, because we have an understanding when we integrate, all of us, to see and give grace and mercy to others. We are able to be more of a wholesome person, more in our authentic truth when we're whole versus fragmented. And number 5, with these new shifts on earth, get into your higher heart. When you're connected, you're activated, and you're grounded, Spirit will show you when you need to make a move. Spirit will show you if you need to go underground. Spirit will show you if you need to leave the country. Spirit will give you the warnings. But we can't hear if we've got a busy mind, busy body, illness. It's a robbing of us. You can heal yourself. You can feel better. You can limit your suffering. We do have a choice. So I'm here to support you all, anyone that may be, ready to activate, awaken, and you may want a community to help hold your hand. Join my community. The individuals I work with are amazing people, and we all have a mission to make a better day for the earth, for ourselves and for others, because it starts here. It starts in your heart, and this is where home is. There's been so many times in my life where Spirit told me, go home, and I would get this a lot when I was in Texas, and home for me is New York State. So there were times where, I went home, but home, I didn't have to go anywhere. Home is here. Home is right within you. And your spirit is your true essence. This is an illusion. This is an avatar. It's a temporary suit. Okay, we're all vessels of, hopefully your spirit, but other entities and energies and spirits can manipulate us. So I'll be diving into the field of STEM, probably the next sermon, and going over the consciousness battle there. Please like, subscribe, share this video, drop a comment with any questions or feedback. I'd love to hear from you. And join me next Sunday at 7 p.m. Have a great week.